Okay, what we do is we usually take food prices as part of the when we check inflation and we work out our inflation figures. Food prices is a factor, but stealthily rising up on us has been the cost of security, and it's been so for many years. For at least the security landscape changed post 9/11, when we started. Diplomats would demand a lot more security. Big business companies and all that would demand a lot more security. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, you look at the crime statistics, and what we've got, the latest we've got, that we can look at would have been from as far back as 2007, 7 years ago, but you live in it, you know the reality. Burglaries, really, while we keep the focus on the murder rate, and we see that murder figures are going up to 500 a year, with 4,000, 5,000 burglaries a year. A lot, in any event, a lot more, because many are unreported. Right? So therefore, that has added the cost of a home. You go to get a mortgage, security is part of your deal. You operate a business, security is an overhead, which passes on to the consumer eventually, which affects the cost of living. In addition to the fact that the national security budget for the year 2014-2015 is $6.9 billion. So we're just going to be adding to that $6.9 billion. Here we've asked and we've invited Mr. Kenneth Greene. He's the operations manager at G4S Security, and he's been working in Trinidad for the past 16 years. He's previously worked in Jamaica and Guyana. G4S is the only international security firm in Trinidad, and we've asked him to come and give his experience and explain to us how he's seen, and as well as he's worked in other parts of the Caribbean, but he can tell us how security has mushroomed, the cost of security, how it is affecting us.
Sure.
Welcome to Brunch at 107.7, Mr. Greene.
Well, thank you both for inviting me here today. Security, one of the common factors I've found is that security probably represents the third highest cost that any business has. Property costs, employment costs, and then security. And it is a very significant cost to any business that is in operation today. And you're right, Sharmain, it does have a very significant impact on the operating costs of business, particularly like within recent times, you had the increase in the minimum wage. That impacted on all security companies. There would have been an increase to our customers, which would then obviously cascade down to your consumer in the workplace, in the marketplace. So yes, security is a very significant factor that one must take into account. You mentioned likewise in the residential areas. If you look at quite a lot of residential areas now in Trinidad, you have neighborhood patrols. People are attempting to make their communities gated. Manned by security on a 24-hour basis. That's also a very significant cost to people, and it's as a result of the perception of crime, the impact of crime, whether it's serious crimes, petty crimes. It is a very significant cost to society.
Okay, you've been doing this for 16 years, therefore you would have an idea of, I want us to narrow it down to what percentage, because if a retail operation in Port of Spain, for example, a security bill can you tell me what will be included in his security bill?
Well, it's several factors you have to take into account: the size of your business, the square footage, the number of entrances, exits, what have you. But it is not uncommon for one to say, for example, in a supermarket, to have an overhead of between $30,000 and $40,000 a month in security.
Which is passed on to the consumer.
Which must be passed on to the consumer. And when I say 30,000, 40,000, that includes your alarm monitoring, your cash in transit to come and collect your cash. And then, of course, because shrinkage is a very big issue in something like a supermarket, the number of security officers you'd have deployed in the supermarket.
There's a question that comes up. You mentioned the minimum wage, and of course that is passed on like any other expenditure, but you don't have that being an occurrence every year. So there are those who argue there's a cost of doing business. Security is part of it, and why does it have to so heavily impact on the consumer when you have to increase your security? Because folks say that should be part of the cost of doing business.
Well, the security industry is a very competitive industry, and what we sell is a service, and what you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So your wage rate to your staff must be competitive, because bear in mind that people that are coming into the security industry, you're competing not just with other security companies, you're competing with your KFCs, you're competing with your TGI Fridays, you're competing with other industries. People are leaving the security industry to go and work in a TGI's or a KFC. You have to remain competitive on that scale as well. So, yes, you have a change in the minimum wage, but the vast majority of security companies do not pay the minimum wage. We're paying above minimum wage. And that is just to retain staff. That is one of the biggest challenges that any security company has, retention of staff. If you were to poll any security company, you'll find that your churn rate on staff is close to 25-30% per annum.
As difficult as that is, I was looking into G4, outside of being one of the biggest security firms in the world, in twinning together with Massey Holdings, etc., and Republic Bank here in Trinidad. You have not gobbled up, but let's just say acquired many of the smaller competitors. Doing that, did that have an impact on reducing the cost of security?
No, the cost of security, as I've pointed out, once your labor costs, because that's a driver for us, your labor cost is always a driver. And once you have to adjust your labor rates to retain staff and attract staff, that will always impact on the cost of security. Because in any business, your recruitment costs, your uniform costs will always be high once you have a high churn rate of staff. And that is one of the biggest challenges you have in the security industry. People look at the security industry as a transient industry. You come here, whether you come into the security industry, whether it is you're going to use it as a platform to get into the police service or the defense force or the fire service, or it's just a walk until you can find something else.
It is 107.7. This is Brunch at 107.
And we're speaking with Mr. Kenneth Greene, the operations manager at G4S Security. Mr. Greene, you need beyond just people sitting at a desk in a security guard's uniform, and even some of these ought to be qualified beyond just sitting there and what most people would see, the visual of a guard. You need highly skilled people.
Correct.
So highly skilled in military training, for a less stronger word, and then in trained officers.
Well, it's not military training. I mean, securities are something totally different from military.
Yeah, it's a strong word, sorry.
The essence of the security industry is loss prevention and risk management. So when you have a security officer on your site, the security officer is not just there to prevent a crime from taking place. The security officer is also there to help you in managing your facility. He does his rounds. He picks up a leak somewhere. He reports it to your facility manager. If there's a fire, he's the first responder with the fire extinguisher. And a lot of security companies know, certainly G4S, have gone for STOW certification, which is Safe to Work, TT, which is something that's put on by the Energy Chamber. And security officer is more than just stopping somebody from stealing a laptop. It has evolved now into a lot more things. And as I say, the umbrella would be, I would say, risk management and loss prevention.
I'm sure that Sharmain has another question for you, so this would be my penultimate question, and it's this. The average house, because we're talking about the cost on the cost of living, and I'm looking at the average person now, not necessarily wanting to be in a gated community, but just wanting to be safe. About what is the cost, you think, per household to folks are spending now to secure themselves?
An alarm system, I would say, would probably run you between $6,000 and $9,000 for installation. Your recurring expenditure would probably be another $600 or $700 a month for monitoring and response. And then if you're looking at automating a gate, you're probably looking at another $5,000 to $6,000 for automating a gate.
So the migration is more to getting devices to protect their areas than using manual energy. Is that what it is?
Well, you will always have a combination of the two. Your expat community and your expat community primarily will always go with a combination of the two: man security on site and electronic solutions. And the cost of a security officer on a 24-hour basis can range, depending on the category of officer that you want, easily at $25,000, $26,000 a month.
Is the demand for security as a consequence of the lack of efficiency of the national security services?
No, I wouldn't say that. The National Security Services does what they can do with the resources that they have available. And within the last few years, the National Security Services have turned to the private security industry to assist them. So you have the introduction of the Community Comfort Patrols. You had the establishment of the Private Security Network Commission, which was to formalize an informal arrangement that existed a long time ago. The police and the security industry work very, very closely together, as always. We've always had a very good relationship with the police service. The police service guides us on what they expect from us. And then there are other areas where the police might come to us and say, well, can you assist us? Whether it's by way of technology, that sort of thing. But there is a very strong relationship between the police and the private security industry. What we need to bear in mind is that even though crimes might be down, it is the personal individual's perception of whether or not crime is down.
And if Sharmain will forgive me and allow me to insert this then, she mentioned that you've worked in a number of different countries.
Yes.
Do you see the level of personnel security comparable with the other places you've gone, or do you see an unusual escalation here in Trinidad? Because that comes to the whole issue of the whole the overview, the whole concept of security. Perception.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jamaica, for example, you have a very high penetration for security services. I think the Jamaican market is one that continues to grow. But serious crimes in Jamaica, 2014 compared to 2013 was down 40%. But you still have the perception. Guyana, where I was in Guyana in probably the worst period in Guyana's history, which would have been 2003, where you had the spate of killings, you had all that sort of thing going on. Guyana is a much safer place today than it was 10 years ago.
Because of the increased security.
Because of the increased security, what have you. Trinidad as well. I mean, in the 16 years I've been here in Trinidad, yes, crime has deteriorated. But no, you are starting to see somewhat of a turnaround. But as I said, it still goes back to the perception of the individual on the street.
You see, you begin to see some sort of a turnaround. Please.
I think that the police are doing what they have to do.
You mean a turnaround for the better is what
you're saying? For the better, yes.
Okay, fine. That's fine.
There is a turnaround for the better. I think, as I said, the major thing for us is what is people's perception as to crime. Now, there are things that one must do to secure your home. I mean, that is one of the most important things. And there is a cost attached to that.
But the question that I did not actually was not able to extract the answer from you, or maybe I missed it, was comparing Trinidad to the other places you have been. Is there a greater perception and is there a greater increase, a greater panic button, as it were, in Trinidad compared to the other places?
I would say yes. There is a greater panic button here in Trinidad than there is to other countries, and I think probably because it's something that Trinidad has not seen. Certainly over the last 5-10 years, the level of crime that you're experiencing. 2003, I think, was a significant landmark as far as crimes go, because 2002, 2003 is when you had the whole spate of kidnappings, and Trinidad became one of the highest ranked per capita with kidnappings in 2003. On the average, now, if you have one kidnapping a year, you have a lot.
You attribute the elimination, the slowdown of these kidnapping to the protective services, or folks employing services like yours?
A combination of the both, because the intelligence network and gathering, and the anti-kidnapping squad is a very credible unit within the police service, and they do work very efficiently. And yes, it's a combination of the two.
Where is the biggest demand for security in Trinidad? In what part, in what aspect? What aspect of our economic life? Is it business, home, or is it? And if also as well, the second part of the question is, if our national security budget is 6.9 billion, that definitely does not include what the private sector is doing.
You're correct.
So what's
you do have the highest demand does come from the business sector. And as I said, it is really just a very competitive industry. So they're always shopping around for the best rates. So the demand is always with the business sector. You do see a lot of growth in the systems integration where you're using manpower and electronic security to maximize your bang for your buck. So that is always the growth. With regards to the national security budget, I mean, quite a lot of that is recurrent expenditure. And yes, there is some capital expenditure, but a lot of it is recurrent expenditure.
So, Bishop, before we go, Bishop, it's easy to draw the conclusion that we are paying for our own security then. We're paying to secure ourselves. Yeah. At the end of the day, in spite of in spite of a $6.9 billion.
Yeah, budget. I mean, but you also need to remember that in the technology age, people are becoming a lot more tech savvy. So, as you look to make your environment safer, you look for ways to make it safe, and of course there is a cost to that. I mean, people are becoming a lot more tech savvy.
Kenneth Greene, Operations Manager at G4S Security. I think it seems to be only one place to go. When I look up at the achievements you've done here in Trinidad, you and your company, I go like, is there any competition here? But thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.